Hello and welcome to Applicata Biblia. My name is Mark Wade, and thank you so much for coming by to hear another part of God's Word. This lesson today is in a series that I call A Walk Through the Bible, or a study in of Bible characters. And essentially it's a walk through the entire Bible, and we don't read it all, the entire Bible. We just hit certain spots that reveal how God deals with different people in the scriptures. Today we're going to be looking at the story of Noah. Now the lesson itself, and I'm going to post the lesson online, it's free, you can take it, it's the first book of 15 lessons. It's what I used to teach middle school age students, and it's pretty good if you already have been a teacher and you know what you want to do. It doesn't give you step-by-step guides on how to teach it, but it's a good resource for that sort of thing if you know what you're doing already. So we've already looked at God creating the earth and the issues that come with mankind, and the fact that mankind sins against God. And mankind breaks his covenant with God and is cast out of the garden, and God has to reject man. And then we see violence on the earth with Cain killing his brother Abel. That's where we are so far. So here we are in chapter 6, and we're going to go ahead and read chapter 6. And then I'm going to just discuss a few things about this chapter and the other chapters 7 through 9. So it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose, which isn't a good thing, I guess. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he is also flesh. He also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. The Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, from man to animals to creeping things, and to birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time. Noah walked with God. Noah became the father of 3 sons. Okay, so there's a bunch more in there that we could read. And when you read through all of these chapters, you're going to find that God does indeed destroy the earth. And if you look into it deeper, you see that Noah does build this ark. It takes him some 100 years or 110 years or something. I'd have to look at it again in depth, but it takes him a very long time. And it is noted that he is preaching Christ in a sense. And he's mentioned in the New Testament in that sense. And there are also a lot of parallels of what happens during this time to what happens when Jesus is the deliverer. So I just wanted to go through some of the things that I just read, that God is unhappy with mankind because men are just violent. The violence on earth at this point is out of control. They're men, and one of the other things that we see God very upset about is that men are just taking wives from whoever. And there could be a lot of meaning behind that as to why that was an issue. Well, I have a lot of speculation about that, and I'll get a little bit into it, but it's only speculation, so it's really just superfluous information. So you can take it with a grain of salt. You don't have to believe anything I say about it. But the important thing here is to see several different things, and but first I think we want to go through the questions that I have in the lessons that I've developed for this class. And the questions that your students would be asking is, why was God upset with man during this time, as I just explained? And then what were the Nephilim? So they would have to kind of do some research and figure out what that is. Not that it's important to understand who they were. It's not important. But knowing that and just understanding that they were there during that day is just a very interesting concept. What does it mean when the scripture says Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord? Right? Well, God liked Noah, obviously, because he had faith in God and was true to God. How does Noah know exactly what to do? And we'll find in there that God describes to him how to build the ark, what kind of wood to make it out of, how big do you make it, how do you make it so that it doesn't sink, you put pitch in there. He tells them how to make it, and it's really extremely large. What is a covenant? So God is going to make this covenant with Noah, and he's going to make a covenant with mankind in general after the flood. And I just ask, what is on a scale from 1 to 10, how important is it to keep a covenant? Well, you know, if you make a promise to somebody, you don't go back on your promise. That's an old concept. And you know, that is how we develop trust in our lives. And the idea is to get not only you, but to get the student interested in these concepts, that this is what builds character. Make a list of the problems Noah and his sons may have encountered while building the ark. Okay? So God tells them to go, you know, cut down trees, and they're making this gigantic structure. It's not like they had tools and they could go to the hardware store and buy a bunch of nails and screws or whatever it would be that you would build a big boat with, or even wooden dowels or whatever, or glue or anything like that. They had to go make all of these resources, go get and create all of these resources on their own. So I try to get people to think about what God is really asking them to do, and the fact that it took so very long for them to do it is not that outlandish of a thought. So, and then in the next lesson, I actually want the students to think about the wives of Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right? Here are these four men building this ark. And more than likely, the people are in the surrounding district were probably thinking this was an odd thing for them to do in the middle of a desert, not necessarily where there's a lot of water. And so it makes sense that they were probably looked on like this is a weird family. And then you have these wives, right? Their wives are helping them as well. So the questions that I ask the students is God angry with just the men, or is he angry with the women as well? And of course, God's angry with everybody at this point. So the question for that second question is, God gave Noah the great task of building a great ship to save his family and Earth's animals. Lists all the tasks needed to build the ark and how the wives could help. So even though we looked into what the men might have to do, how are their wives going to support them? Because just a few chapters ago, we understand that the wife is there to support her husband so he can accomplish what they're trying to do. They're both working towards the same thing. Did Noah have grandchildren before the flood? Well, apparently not, according to this text, right? It took a long time to build the ark. Do you think the wives may have become discouraged at this time? Well, of course they did. Of course, this was a long, arduous thing for them to take care of. They were normal, and it would have been very normal for them to say, you know, this is crazy. There's no water around here. Why are we doing this? Or to question their husbands, or to say, how long is this going to take? You know, after a year, that's a long time. But after 50 years, that's even longer. After 80 years, it's like, I think the point I would be trying to make as a teacher would be, think of the faith that's going on with this family, that they're staying focused on the task of building this ark that God has asked them to make. And then the last question is, describe what you think the wives look like. Because younger people, middle school age children, high school, and all that, even college, I would say, are very much attuned to what people look like. Are they beautiful? Are they dirty? Are they smelly? You know, are they, you know, do they get sweaty during the day? Well, that's probably the way things were. And this is what I try to bring out to anybody who wants to study this, is these people didn't have bathtubs to go take a bath every night. And my point is, we are very blessed in our day and time to have air conditioning and running water and toilets and nice soft beds that we can sleep in and all of that sort of thing. That wasn't the case here. So the lesson plan attempts to try and get across to the student, whoever might be reading it. It doesn't have to be middle school age. It could be high school or anybody, that these people were doing something extremely difficult for the time. So just to kind of go over what happens in all of these and kind of encapsulate these 4 chapters. The main thrust of the story is that mankind has left God to do whatever he wants. God has set order among his people, but they ignore him, and then violence reigns throughout the world. And we're going to get into a little bit of that. And then the remaining chapters, chapter 7, the ark is completed, the animals are placed in the ark, and the floods come, everything is wiped out. Chapter 8, the floods stop, the waters recede, Noah and his family and the animals come out of the ark. Noah sacrifices to God. God says he will not destroy everything with the flood again. He's not going to do that again. God blesses Noah in chapter 9. God blesses Noah and his family. He allows the eating of animals now. So I don't know what changed, but before this, God had not sanctioned the eating of animals, and now he does. It doesn't mean necessarily that people weren't, but it was not sanctioned by God. God does not allow the eating of blood, and that, of course, is pointing to the Christ, which we always try to bring out in these lessons. He requires the life of the one who commits violence. And more importantly, sin, we see, okay, sin is requiring life. And that is, again, is where we see the Christ in this story. God recommits his covenant with Noah that he will not destroy the earth with a great flood. And the token of that covenant is the rainbow. Now, we might say, well, a rainbow comes because there's a prism with the water, the way it goes through, it refracts or whatever. Well, okay, well, God made it happen that way. It's great that we can understand how it works. Good for us, like we're really smart. But God is the one who made that physical law happen. The genealogies of Noah are covered, and it's basically 3 sons. During this dissertation, Shem disrespects his father, and he's cursed for it. And the curse goes against Canaan, his son. And we'll see in future verses that the land of the Canaanites becomes an issue for God, especially with the terrible idolatry that they commit again, and they kill their children and do all kinds of things. So this is another future thing that happens. And it's part of, again, it's part of the story that's leading up to the Christ. All of this has to do with that. Mankind is just failing and tripping over himself before God. He can't get it straight, and he needs a Savior. And they still have a long way to go. They still have a lot of kings and all kinds of things and judges that they have to live through to understand their need for the Messiah. But that will happen. It's just still very early on. Okay, so just a couple of other quick things. Who were the Nephilim and these people, these renowned people, these mighty men of renown of old? And it says here, the Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and afterward, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old men of renown. Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was continually evil. He was sorry he made them. We come to understand that there are these Nephilim and or giants, whatever you want to call them. And we say, so what were they? Who were they? What's going on here? Did they get wiped out in the flood? Well, no, they didn't, because later on we see a guy like Goliath come along, right? And he's associated with these giants. There is a book, an apocryphal book of Enoch, which is really not very credible, that talks about this, like these were fallen angels or something like that. I don't know, probably not. Maybe they were, but I wouldn't rely on that book. I have not read it, but that doesn't mean that I haven't read about it. And what I've read about it is that it wasn't written by Enoch, and maybe not even by a Jewish source, which gives it even less credibility. But one of the things, and this is, okay, I want to stop here and say this is my opinion of what I see here, because we kind of trip over ourselves all the time trying to describe what's happening here, where it says the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not strive with man forever. So what's the issue here? Well, there's several things and this is nothing that I would necessarily teach in a middle school age class, but I would give my opinion to anybody who's willing to listen. And one of the things that we don't have here as a culture is the understanding of how a lot of marriages work. A lot of marriages are arranged, where the father chooses somebody's daughter for his son, or maybe some woman's father goes to another father and says, I notice you have a son. He's about the same age, or, even if they're not the same age, a lot of times older men were marrying younger women because they actually had things. They actually had property and those sorts of things. And he would go and make a proposition. Either way, these men, these fathers, these dads they were propositioning each other so that families could be joined together, and there would be shared property in one way or another. The wife would come with a dowry from her family, and then maybe the husband's father would give her a gift sometimes, or something like that. But these were all very much arranged in an orderly fashion. And if there's one thing I keep talking about, we know that God is an orderly God. All you have to do is look at creation. Everything was made after its own kind. And if fathers, by tradition, are looking for marriages to benefit two families, it's not a good idea for people to just go off marrying whoever they want. And, for some reason we want to say, oh, well, these were fallen angels, they were angels who were marrying women. And, these are heavenly spiritual beings that were marrying these physical women and then having children with them, and that's how you get the giants. I don't know that that's the case. I don't think that's the case. And when I look at it, I don't see that necessarily. I think that's a nice story. It makes for makes nice storytelling, but I don't know how true it is. It seems to me that these men were just not doing things orderly as God had purpose for man to be, and that he was just not liking it. And they were taking these wives. They had no right to be with these women. They had no right to take them as a wife. They weren't doing it properly. Maybe God was the one who was arranging marriages. I don't know. I kind of doubt that. But what we see is mankind going against the strict order of the original creation. And this is something we have to remember. That's never changed. God created things a specific way, and for him, it needs to stay that way. And in this time, mankind was going directly against that. And so he's done with it, not only because of that, but because of all the violence going on during the day. So as far as the Nephilim, there were giants in the land, and I don't even know if the Nephilim themselves were the giants. Some readings kind of separate the Nephilim from the giants. But one of the wives of either Noah, Ham, Shem, or Japheth, or even maybe within the lineage of Noah, that chromosome or that gene or whatever you want to call it is there, because later we see that there are giants in the land again. And so, and people probably want to speculate how that happens. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. So here we are, we're only in chapters 6 through 9 of Genesis, and mankind has totally corrupted earth. They can't even think good thoughts ever, and except for Noah and his family. And there may be other people out there that whose time has just come, and maybe we'll talk about that some other time. But for the most part, the entirety of mankind is just too depraved for God, and so he puts an end to it. So in the next lesson, we're going to spring forward from when this is done, and how we are going, and then we'll see how one of the main characters in the scriptures, his name is Abraham, is brought into the picture. Thank you so much for coming by. This was not an in-depth lesson of any kind, anything like that. It's just a walk through the Bible to see how things play out. Thanks again for coming by, and I'll see you later.